Welcome back to the Alt. Thank you for joining me again today. I am your host, Shapirian, winding down after what was an exhilarating Week 7 NFL Sunday. That was a loaded slate, a lot of good games. We're going to get into it. Let's talk Steelers-Jets. Let's talk some Lions-Vikings. We got my 5 and 5 coming up later where I give you 5 takes in 5 minutes about what I saw on Sunday. I love doing these Monday episodes. This Sunday was electric. Before we get right into it, if we could, do me a favor, check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please consider doing so. Seriously, takes just a second, and I would greatly appreciate it. It means more to me than you would know. You can also follow me at the Alt NFL on most social medias. Leave a comment down below if I missed something. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. I do answer all of my comments. With that said, let's get right into the football. Let's talk about the Sunday night game. Steelers, Jets. I'm going to lead with the Steelers because not only did they destroy the Jets in this one, effectively ending their season, now we have to have the conversations of, oh my God, what can the Steelers team do? If you didn't watch this game, the best way I can describe it to you is that it didn't really matter how inaccurate he was at points, and the first half was rough. But the Steelers offense under Russell Wilson looked like a bona fide good NFL offense. Not great, but good. And in a year where teams are struggling to score like 23 points or so, like that's genuinely like the winning margin in the NFL this year. You get the 23, you're going to win most of your games. They won this game 37-15, and yes, that's a little inflated because of a last-second meaningless Najee Harris touchdown. Thank you for that, by the way. Helped me win my little 4-leg parlay. I appreciate it, sir. But this seemed like they were in control for the entire second half. This was a one-score game for a lot of the fourth quarter, and it doesn't feel like it because of how poorly the Jets' season has gone and because of how smothering Steelers' defense is. It seemed like at every turn, the Steelers' defense was making the Jets pay for whatever decision they decided to make. And if Breece Hall wasn't an absolute yak machine, I'm not calling him a yak merchant. I don't like when people say that in a negative tone there, but a yak machine getting tons of yards after the catch, Jets' night would have been even worse. The Steelers' defense, I've been telling you all season long, it's best in the NFL. I came in today, before the Sunday night game happened, getting ready to be like, maybe it's the Chiefs. And I've long said like the Chiefs defense deserves a ton of credit here. It's a lot of the reason that they're in genuine dynasty status right now and pushing the first three-peat ever in NFL history. But we're seeing already the dividends of how good their defense is. And arguably, the two best defenses in the NFL are a combined 11-2. In a league where the quarterbacks dominate the conversation, the quarterbacks dominate the salary cap, the quarterbacks dominate the commercials, the quarterbacks dominate the discussions, the quarterbacks dominate the power rankings, the quarterbacks dominate everything. In my opinion, the teams with the two best defenses in the NFL, one of which has the best quarterback, sure, are 11-2 on the season combined in the Chiefs and the Steelers. 6-0, 5-2. And that 5-2 for the Steelers has been very impressive when you look at the way that they've done it. With two quarterbacks now, lots of low-scoring affairs, keeping teams from scoring on them for the most part. And look, I get it. If you want to have the discussion of who have they really done it against, fine. Okay? The two losses are to the Cowboys and to the Colts. And, you know, unless you're going to discount the Chargers, when I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Chargers this week after the Monday night game, I think they've beaten maybe the best team they've played in the Chargers with how the Cowboys have looked. And everybody was still so high on the Jets' defense that to put 37 points on them is significant. Let's hyperfixate on the Steelers for just a second here. A lot of the discussion this week is going to be about Russell Wilson. And I've questioned on the show just a couple days ago, saying, I don't know that I get this decision. Okay. Now you see why Mike Tomlin, who I always speak glowingly of as a coach, is one of the greatest coaches in the history of the game and why I'm not. We see now why he knows what he's doing and why most people don't. And I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. Let's not crown them as champs yet. But for what it's worth, I mean, if you see Russell Wilson play like this in a playoff game, does it not make you feel better about their chances of winning it than you do with them with Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky or Statue Big Ben? Trubisky, I don't think ever played in a playoff game for him, but you get the point. I don't know what their ceiling is going to be, but it's all but certain at this point that they are going to be in the playoffs. I actually wonder if I search literally right now. The NFL's website is really good about updating immediately the playoff odds. They're really good about it. As of right now, what are the Steelers' playoff odds per the analytics? They have an 81% chance of making it. Hello? They are a juggernaut. They're incredible. And, you know, in all seriousness, we give them a lot of grief for the way they do things and not being able to win in the playoffs, and this is their longest playoff losing streak in team history. I get it. They're there every year, though. You're going to figure it out one of these times, or you're going to collapse. And they seem closer to figuring it out than they do to collapsing. So, big ups to the Steelers. I think that you're going to go into that. I was calling it an 8-game gauntlet of, 9 games now, actually, because you have the Commanders to start it off. Commanders, all 6 division games. Eagles, Chiefs. You're going to go into it in a great position to where, that's your last 9 games, but coming off your bye right before that, the Browns look awful. You always do well against the Ravens. The division is not out of play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the rest of the AFC should be scared if you have them on your schedule coming up. I will focus on the Jets for a minute here, and there's actually a very real chance, depending on what I decide to go with, that you clicked on this video because of a Jets title and a Jets thumbnail. Okay. Unless you're listening on Spotify or Apple Pods, by the way, which I am on, if you ever just want to listen to a podcast. But, can we just have an honest and open conversation about the Jets finally? I've been lower on them than most by saying I think they're just a playoff team at best that cannot win the Super Bowl. I said that before the season started. I said after week 1, see, you think that looks like a Super Bowl team? And now we have to question, is this even the same team? It's being coached by a different person. They have Devontae Adams now. Someone else is calling the plays who's neither of the people I was referring to. It's not the former head coach or the current head coach. And they still just kind of look the same. I will go back just a couple weeks ago to where I said firing Robert Saleh makes no sense because the likelihood of it fixing the problem is low. And in these last 2 games against the Bills and the Steelers, the interim head coach has looked like an interim head coach. And I get it. Jeff Ulbrich, is very liked in that building. He's auditioning, and right now, I guess you would say he's failing the audition. Sure, but what do you want the guy to do? I'm going to look at it like this. I'm going to bring the Bengals into this for a second, but just for a good reason. Bear with me. My dad texted me earlier on Sunday after the Bengals-Browns game ended. He said, "Man, I am shocked your game was that close." And it was weird. There were some antics and missed kick and things like that and whatever. And I said, I'm not sure why. We've stunk all year. I followed that text up immediately. I double texted him. And I said, if you're a good team, you can stink for a couple of games and be fine. We've stunk for 7 games. I think we just stink. The Jets have stunk for 7 games. I think they just stink. Okay? I do. And the AFC, listen, AFC East is out of contention at this point. You're 3 games back halfway through the season. You're not winning that division. It's the Bills again. Because the Dolphins have been injury plagued. The Jets stink. The Patriots are even worse. Sorry. Don't know what to tell you. I had the Bills winning it, but I thought the Jets would be better than they are. The question now then becomes, what do you do? I looked at their schedule, and I think if I'm being honest with what I've seen at them at 2-5 right now, I think they finished the season 7-10. I think they finished the year 3-5 in their last 8 games with what I've seen so far. Can they turn it around? Sure. But there's nothing about them that's looked really good at any point in any game right now. They've lost a lot of the big ones. They've beaten the Titans. And who else did they beat? They didn't beat the Patriots. They beat the Titans and the Patriots. Should I be excited about those 2? You get the Patriots again. Other than that, you only get a few more crappy teams. So, all the love and focus deserves to go to the Steelers for this one. I think they're going to get it all week, reasonably so. I will caution with this, though. I still don't think this team, as currently structured, can win a Super Bowl. I just don't. I'm sorry. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. I think that's a very safe thing to say at this point, but I don't think they can win a Super Bowl. Don't let people get away with trying to convince you that this is now a Super Bowl team because of 116 for 29, 200-yard performance from Russell Wilson against a 2-5 team. Okay? Don't do it. Push back a little bit. Tweet them. Hey, listen. It's one game. They get to 8-2, 9-2, 10-3, something like that. Okay, then we can start to have those discussions. For now, though, it's always been about the playoffs for them. We always knew they're going to be in the playoffs. Super Bowl? I don't think so. But congrats to the Steelers for the huge win on Sunday Night Football. For the Jets, I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to justify talking about you this season. Now let's move on to the game of the week that did indeed live up to the hype. Lions-Vikings. In the end of it all, Lions, with like 15 seconds left, ended up kicking a game-winning kick to win this one 31-29 in what was a very good back-and-forth game. The momentum in this one felt like it could switch on a dime, and it felt like whoever had the ball last was going to win, and that's exactly what happened. I guess the Vikings did technically have the ball last with 15 seconds, no timeouts, you know what I mean. Detroit, that aggression paid off in this one. They were very aggressive at very key points in this one. There's a lot to dig in. So let's dig into one of the best games of the entire NFL season so far with this great NFC North matchup. First thing I want to point out is that, on this show, we give our big ups, right, to teams that, have earned it and deserve it and stuff. And while I'm certainly still very high on both of these teams, one of the individual phases or sets of a specific team that I give a ton of credit to is specifically the Vikings defense. And this one, they were really a bit shaky at times, and I'm not sure if it was the familiarity factor of playing the NFC North opponent who has seen them a couple of times before, or what it was in this one. But Minnesota was not nearly as able to disguise their coverage as they have been, normally throughout the season. And then the counterpart of that is that on the other side of the ball, Jared Goff has been able to get through his progression so nicely, read the defenses so nicely, and in my opinion, he's one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the entire NFL at doing so, which is not something that you could have seen coming, 4 seasons ago or so? I don't even think Lions fans were happy about Jared Goff when they received him in the Matthew Stafford trade. I think they saw that as, we just lost our guy for a guy who has not been able to get the job done when it matters and things of that nature. Little did we know he had a lot of developing to still do. Little did we know that Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson was exactly the coaching staff that would be able to develop him in this way. I think he's one of the top quarterbacks in the entire NFL at reading coverages and getting through his progressions. Top 3 or 4, probably. And for the Vikings defense, there was a couple times like that one touchdown, they showed cover 0 and they picked him right apart as a result. Only one guy dropped back of the 7-man rush that they showed, and it seemed like for one reason or another, they fully expected it. They got a guy one-on-one, and they hit him. And this one, Jahmyr Gibbs had a big day. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a big day. They were able to do really whatever they wanted on the offensive side of the ball after a very slow first quarter, right? And then, getting back to the Lions for just a second there, on the other side of the ball for them, you definitely noticed a lack of Aiden Hutchinson in this one, but they did end up getting thrown over 4 times after they struggled to get to him early in the game. Including a weird one, by the way, on the very last play of the game on what looked like it was going to be a Hail Mary attempt. They showed the 3-man rush, which is pretty standard. Sometimes it's a 2 or 1-man rush in those cases. I think they showed 3, sent all 3, and then after like a 1.5 to 2 second hesitation, a 4th guy came in from the side and got the sack on Darnold to where he didn't even get the Hail Mary off, which is kind of hilarious, kind of genius. But overall on this one, if we're looking at it from a big umbrella type of take here, how many teams in the NFL are better than either of these 2 teams right now? 2? 3? It's not a lot, and I'm not sure that anyone is better than the Lions as of right now. Look, I get it. If you like power rankings watching, and I get it. I've always been big into power rankings, and the constant ever-changing shift is fun to talk about and things like that. Kansas City is going to remain number 1 right now, and that's fine. The Lions are going to be number 2 out of principle on most power rankings, and you definitely can't ding the Chiefs in a week where they, took care of business against the 49ers in a way that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. But, if nothing else, they've looked like the best team if you're just going by the caliber of how they've looked. I think Kansas City is going to be number 1 in most people's power rankings out of principle, nothing else. Detroit has looked the best in the NFL over the course of these 7 weeks, and has rocked over their last 4 games, too. And they're off the bye, and they look fresh, and they look ready to go. Let's get back to Minnesota for a second here. And We talk about the Lions and how high I am on them, but how could you feel worse about Minnesota after this game? As a Minnesota defender this particular season, which I became really after week 2, I will admit I wasn't on the train in the preseason. I'm not claiming that, but I've been a Minnesota defender all season for the most part at this point. And you look at that right now, and it still feels really good to be on their side of things. How could you feel worse about them after this one, where they barely lost to a team that they were expected to lose to, in a game where, like I said, it felt like whoever had the ball last would win, and that's exactly what happened. Look, you did lose. It may cost you the division eventually, but you are a playoff team if you're Minnesota. You have looked like one in all 6 of your games this season, and you still have a ton of momentum and a ton of very high-quality wins under your belt already. Back to Detroit for a second here. My favorite thing that I saw in this one in particular was Jahmyr Gibbs getting 15 carries compared to David Montgomery's 9. Look, I get the whole, Gibbs, Montgomery, Bijan, Algier kind of conversations that people have where they're like, oh, I hate this, right? And I've always been on the side of I do think you give it to the marquee guys. I think you give it to them while they're very young, because I think that's when running backs are at their most effective, is on their first contract. I think the data shows that. And so in my mind, my ideal amount of carries proportionally to David Montgomery for Jahmyr Gibbs is 65% to 35%. That's what I like. That's kind of what I want for Bijan Robinson as well. That's kind of what I want for Chase Brown and Cincy. That's an underrated halfback room right now, where it's one guy's emerging, but one guy is the incumbent who's getting paid a little bit, right? He was expected to be the number one guy anyways. I like giving it to the young guy who has shown good flashes, and Jahmyr Gibbs has had many good games already at this young point in his career. But it does seem like they are more willing to just ride the hot hand, and that they tend to go with David Montgomery first, so he becomes the hot hand early when your offense is as good as Detroit's has looked. I think there's kind of a catch-22 with that, But in my mind, ideally, Jahmyr Gibbs 65%, David Montgomery 35%. That's my ideal amount. Today we saw Jahmyr Gibbs 62.5%, so 1 carry short of my exact ideal proportion there. And look what happened. He had a fantastic game, and it was a big reason that the Lions were able to win today, So that's kind of, you can literally see today why I'm 65% or so. That's what I want to see from Jahmyr Gibbs in this offense. To the Vikings, to end on kind of a high note here, you saw today, this was the Sam Darnold game, in my opinion. He had really good stats in the box score. He did have a pick. You were still able to recover and were right there in it. You're going to have a few of these. You're going to drop a few down the stretch. But Sam Darnold has shown me all season that he's absolutely the guy for them right now. And I don't know if it's just that Kevin O'Connell has used them in a way that is, very resemblant of Kirk Cousins. But in a lot of times today, if you watch this Lions-Vikings game, watch it and tell me you don't see 2 Kirk Cousins at his best out there on the field for both teams. It's not just because it's the Vikings. I think Jared Goff resembles him in a lot of ways too. I like both of these teams a lot, and I hope they're still both around down the stretch. For now, the Lions, I think you're the best team in the NFL. I think you've looked like so far, power rankings wise. Like I said, I have you winning the NFC, so it's no real surprise there. And for the Vikings, you still are primed to go on a very big run this season and remain one of the best surprises in the NFL thus far. So with those 2 games out of the way, let's move into 5-5. It's hard to talk about every game and keep the show at a manageable load for me, right? And also, I'm only one person, so I can only watch, so many games or so many parts of so many games to feel comfortable talking about them and like that. So some teams get left out of these segments. It happens. What we're about to do now is 5 takes in 5 minutes, where I just kind of give some opinions that are usually resembling things that I saw today, some changes that I saw today, some opinions of teams that I saw today. Let's get right into it. This is 5-5. Take number 1. Last week I backtracked on the Packers offense. This week I want to specifically backtrack on Jordan Love. He has an it factor that I have been hesitant to acknowledge. And yes, this game against the Texans today was not the best game from him. But you can see on some of these throws that he borders on that umbrella of the league's elite, right? He's not quite there in my opinion. The league's elite, he's usually 4 or 5, sometimes 6 quarterbacks. He's right there though. And Green Bay has known that the entire time, really, that he's their guy, at least since the second half of last season. I've not been ready to admit it myself. So with a huge win today over the Texans, where he continues to, he had a couple picks today, it happens, But he continues to show up in the box score. He continues to make really big-time throws. They're able to get the job done, and he looks awesome. Puts a lot of zip on the ball at times, and his decision-making, he's got a little bit of Favre in him. But I think Green Bay is the perfect fit for him just for that exact reason. So Jordan Love, big ups to you. Take number 2. This one's not one that you're going to hear on any other show today. Not any other show today, in my opinion. I think the Los Angeles Rams can still make a run. And I know that sounds crazy. Yes, they barely won today over the hospice Las Vegas Raiders. But they're so banged up themselves. Next week, they face the Vikings at home. And if they lose that one, and they fall to 2-5 with a bye week in their rearview mirror, okay, we can fully 1,000% write them off. And I've wrote off most other teams in the situation of 1-4, now 2-4 as of today. But we're basically not seeing the real Rams yet. And I don't know that we will. But look at this stretch of games after the Vikings next week, if they can pull that one off at home. A very, very winnable stretch of games. I think they can easily get back to 500 before December. And if you're 500 going into December, you're in the mix. You just have to win those games down the stretch. I don't think the Rams are a Super Bowl contender. I'm not writing them off of a playoff run yet. I think they can still do the thing. And I trust the leadership and the coaching and Matt Stafford. Take number 3. San Francisco. What is going on this season? I think you're very lucky that the rest of the NFC West has looked very average. Because if not for that, am so ready to sell all of my stock in this team. The Rams have been super hurt. I don't trust the Seahawks overall, even though they had a big one on Sunday over the Falcons. And the Cardinals are too inconsistent. We'll see them tomorrow night against the Chargers. If not for that, I would be hitting the major panic button for you. You're lucky that the NFC West has been average, because otherwise, I don't think I'd trust you to get a wild card spot. I think you still win this division, but you've got to get healthy. I gave that take very early on. They've got to be healthy to be able to win it all. They're not healthy. We're seeing the results of that right now. Brock Purdy can't will you to victory over the league's elite. Wasn't able to do so on Sunday against the Chiefs. Take number 4. I've been wondering if Deshaun Watson was going to get Kevin Stefanski, a former Coach of the Year winner, fired, 2-time Coach of the Year winner, if I'm not mistaken. I think he won it last year too. Because I think the 3-14 or 4-13 that they were headed to this season would have done the job, and I think Jimmy Haslam would have had Kevin Stefanski's head for it. But now, with Deshaun Watson hurt, out for the season, it's up to Jameis, more than likely, right? DTR was the backup today. He looked terrible against the Bengals. He looks absolutely awful. Wasn't able to complete a throw more than 5 yards down the field accurately. It seemed like Jameis came right in, led a touchdown drive, and had me hitting the panic button after DTR got hurt, right? Otherwise, yeah, I don't know. It's something to keep an eye on. If Jameis Winston plays and they still stink, now it's even worse for Kevin Stefanski because you don't have the Deshaun Watson excuse. Something to keep an eye on. I thought Deshaun was going to get him fired if they went 3-14 or something like that. Now it's up to Jameis. Take number 5. The Philadelphia Eagles today absolutely demolished the New York Giants in a game that I admittedly, as of the time of recording, have seen almost 0 seconds of. A few clips, and that's it. 28-3. Okay, and the Giants, we know what to think of them, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles have had the panic button hit on them way too early from the whole world. I'm not convinced they're a great team. I've remained convinced they're a good team. And they have the Bengals on their schedule next week, coming to Cincy for the Bengals whiteout game. And I get that that's not a huge national story, but here, locally in Cincy, people have been talking about they're not that good. They're not that good. Yes, they are, and I've been trying to tell everyone they're that good. You saw again today, when they're rolling, yes, it was against the Giants, but when they're rolling, there's not a team in the league they can't beat. Saquon is a bona fide X factor still at this point in his career, and I think he's going to go off in Cincinnati next week to further back Cincy away from 500. I think we saw today that the Eagles were written off too quickly. I'm going a little over on this take. That's kind of been a new ongoing tradition for the 5th take in 5-5. But the last big point I want to make about the Eagles is this. Pay attention to the way that they are covered. When they win, it's, oh my God, great and awesome and yay. When they lose, they're covered like the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not sure why. They have very loud fans that I've been very critical of at certain points in time. But they're very passionate, and I think that they engage a lot, and that's why you see it. I think the Eagles are covered like the Cowboys these days, and I'm not sure why that is. And I think we, as a NFL society, we, as the football side of the internet, should reject it and say, stop. Stop covering them like they're the Cowboys, where every loss is a nuclear, terrible explosion, and every win is we're going to win the Super Bowl. That's how they're treated, and I don't like it. That said, people hit the panic button a little too early, okay? I don't know how they'll be covered this week. I imagine it'll be positive. People panicked on too early. They're going to be a very good team. They're going to be in the mix down the stretch, especially if the Cowboys can't get their crap together. So that was 5-5. I think we went like 30, 40 seconds over there. Not too bad overall. And with that said, that actually wraps up today's episode of The Alt. When there's a doubleheader on Monday Night Football, I tend to go more into them on the next day after the games have happened. So watch them tonight. Chargers-Cardinals is going to be, I don't know, but Ravens-Bucks is going to be a fantastic game. In my opinion, the biggest and most important of Week 7. So, no Chiefs, no Bills, no Commanders in my 5-5 this week. That's because I didn't learn anything new about them, for what it's worth. I'm still high on all three of them, and I'm going to remain that way, in my opinion. And hopefully Jaden Daniels' rib injury is not serious. Seemed like it wasn't. So, with that said, that wraps up this episode of The Alt. I'm excited to be back with you tomorrow to talk about the Monday night doubleheader that I wish they'd stop doing. I like having one Monday night game. We'll talk about some other things that we learned from Week 7 as we begin to look forward to Week 8. Don't miss it. Excited to be back with you. Tell a friend, leave a comment, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you back here bright and early tomorrow.